Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this evening. Thank you for the beautiful weather today. And we ask that you help us to have eyes to see and ears to hear what your word would speak to us and say to us, Father. We thank you so much. We pray all these things in Yeshua's name. Amen. So we are on Exodus 11. And last week when we finished 10, it was when Moses had his final confrontation with Pharaoh. Although it seems that chapter 11 kind of, in the second paragraph, kind of continues that discussion. But the first paragraph is kind of a break. So he was talking to Pharaoh and he told him, Pharaoh said to him, to get away from me, take care never to see my face again. On the day you see my face, you shall die. And Moses said, as you say, I will not see your face again. But when you read further, I don't know if he did see his face again, but starting in chapter 11, verse 1, it says, Yahweh said to Moses, yet one plague more, and I will bring upon Pharaoh and upon Egypt. Afterward, he will let you go from here. When he lets you go, he will drive you away completely. Speak now in the hearing of the people that they ask, every man of his neighbor and every woman of her neighbor for silver and gold jewelry. And Yahweh gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. Moreover, the man Moses was very great in the land of Egypt, in the sight of Pharaoh's servants and in the sight of the people. And it sounds like he was probably more popular than Pharaoh himself. So Moses said, and this is kind of going back to where he's speaking to Pharaoh. So it seems like it's all, that first paragraph was kind of an interlude. So Moses said, thus says Yahuwah, about midnight I will go out in the midst of Egypt, and every firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die. From the firstborn of Pharaoh who sits on his throne, even to the firstborn of the slave girl who is behind the handmill, and all the firstborn of the cattle. There shall be a great cry throughout all the land of Egypt, such as there has never been, nor ever will be again. But not a dog shall growl against any of the people of Israel, either man or beast, that you may know that Yahuwah makes a distinction between Egypt and Israel. And all these your servants shall come down to me and bow down to me, saying, get out, you and all the people who follow you, and after that I will go out. And he went out from Pharaoh in hot anger. Then Yahuwah said to Moses, Pharaoh will not listen to you, that my wonders may be multiplied in the land of Egypt.
So
Moses, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I have a comment on the verse. I just had it. Verse 4 in the that's Yahweh says about midnight, I'm going to go in the midst of Egypt. The Targum says about midnight, I will be revealed in the midst of Egypt. And just adding that little word revealed reminds me of the verse that says, 1 Thessalonians 5:2, for you yourselves know full well that the day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night.
Yeah.
And since we know it's Passover based on that Septuagint rendition of Jeremiah, it makes me wonder, is this going to unfold again? Yahweh is he going to reveal himself in these wonders and plagues and signs, some of them at this midnight time? It would be very interesting based on some of the other places that this nighttime thing seems to take place. So yeah. I wonder if anyone else has any thoughts on that.
Well, it does say later in the chapter, towards the end of the chapter, I think it closes out. We'll probably get, well, the chapter 12 actually, that it's a a night of watching. Yahuwah is watching, or he's observing. So he's definitely got his hand on this whole. Well, when I was reading this, it seems like this is like the most, probably the not the most, it's one of the most significant events in history this very night. So Pharaoh will now listen to you, that my wonders may be multiplied in the land of Egypt. Moses and Pharaoh did all these wonders before Pharaoh, and Yahuwah hardened Pharaoh's heart. He made his heart strong, and he did not let the people of Israel go out of the land. So there's actually three things that the Israelites do. The first thing is they ask all their neighbors for all their gold and silver. So they're basically getting retribution for all the slave labor that they did, because Pharaoh literally built his kingdom on the backs of the Israelites. And they paid a dear price for that, not only for a lot of their children, but just for all the hard work. So it says in verse 3 that Yahuwah gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. So he prepared their hearts so that they would give them all their gold and silver. The second thing is that he says there's going to be in verse 6, there's going to be a great cry throughout all the land of Egypt, such as there had never been, nor will ever be again. So you probably recall it. Donnie has a hand up, or is that Lisa? Go ahead. Donnie?
It's me.
Okay.
It's Lisa. So what Mark was talking about, Matthew 25, but the wise took oil in their vessels with their lamps while the bridegroom tarried, they all slumbered and slept. And at midnight there was a cry made, behold, the bridegroom cometh, go ye out to meet him.
See?
So
Yeah, there you go. There's something about that time of the night, and
Yeah.
guessing this is happening the night before Passover, or Passover night. What's the context here?
Well, I believe isn't it Passover night
okay.
when
So maybe it's a good idea that we at least stay up till 1 o'clock.
yeah, and watch and be ready.
Getting in the habit of staying up till 1 so we don't miss something.
Well, I was actually thinking about that because when you read this closely, it's like he's telling you you need something like you need to be ready and prepared. And usually we have our Passover. Sometimes we'll just fellowship afterwards, and you know, uh, but it's really a serious matter, I
Yeah,
believe.
it's almost like to be vigilant.
Yeah, be vigilant. Yeah, like the five wise virgins. Well, this second thing that he says there's going to be a great cry that goes up, such as never will be heard. So you'll recall back in chapter 8 when Pharaoh, in Moses' first confrontation with Pharaoh, he said, well, let me turn back to it here. 5 verse 8. He says, the number of bricks that they made in the past you shall impose on them, you shall by no means reduce it, for they are idle. Therefore they cry, let us go and offer sacrifice to our God. So he's like, ridiculing them. So, oh, you guys are just crying, a bunch of crybabies. Well, who was telling him, well, now you're going to hear a cry that's never been heard before. And the third thing that happens is that it's said that all Moses had is, he was very great in the land, in the sight of Pharaoh's servants, and in the sight of people, of all the people. And he tells Pharaoh before he leaves, he says, all these your servants shall come down to me and bow down to me. So he's telling him, you've taken my people, people of Yahuwah, and you've made them servants of yours when they are actually servants of Yahuwah. And all I asked you to do was just 3 days to go out in the desert so we could have a festival. And you wouldn't let us do that. Now you have to pay because your servants are going to come and bow down to me and you're going to beg me to leave. So I just find it interesting that, they didn't leave empty-handed, but there was a certain amount of retribution paid towards Pharaoh before, the big Red Sea incident. Any thoughts or questions or? But we can continue on to chapter 12, which is the chapter that about the teachings on Passover. And this is the first of very many teachings in the Torah of instructions, statutes and all that follows throughout through the end of Exodus mostly, and Leviticus, of course, and a large portion of Numbers and Deuteronomy. So chapter 1, or verse 1, chapter 12, Yahuwah said to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, this month shall be for you the beginning of months. So this is the first month, as Aviv. And I don't really know if before this time if they had a designated first month or not. I'm not really sure. But maybe starting here, this is when they started. This month shall be for you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year for you. Tell all the congregation of Israel that on the 10th day of this month, every man shall take a lamb according to their father's houses, a lamb for a house. And so this is the day, the 10th month, where they choose the lamb. And we generally think of how Yeshua went into Jerusalem on the 10th day of the first month, riding on the donkey as the lamb. He will be the sacrificial lamb for all the people to inspect him and see if he is worthy of that calling, of which he is. A lamb for a household. And if the household is too small for a lamb, then he and his nearest neighbor shall take according to the number of persons, according to what each can eat, you shall make your count for the lamb. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male, a year old. You may take it from the sheep or the goats, and you shall keep it until the 14th day of the month, when the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill their lambs at twilight. So every household chooses a lamb, and if a household is too small, they can combine households. And everyone chooses their lamb on the 10th day of the month, and on the 14th, the day of Passover, that's the day that they will slaughter the lamb.
I have a question or a comment.
Go ahead.
So verse 5, I've heard it said and used a lot of times that because Yeshua is the lamb that's represented here on this Passover night, because it says unblemished, a male, a year old, some say that this is evidence that his ministry was 1 year and not 3 year. So yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, I've heard that. I think didn't Michael Rood first come up with, I don't know if he first, but he kind of popularized it. Which kind of makes sense if you, I heard 70 weeks, a 70-week ministry, which is a little more than a year. It's hard to, that could go from a Sukkot to a Passover in the following year. So, but that seems like a little more than 70 weeks, doesn't it? I don't know.
Seems like it, yeah.
So this is this first part. That's just the very first teaching on the Passover. Verse 7, then they shall take some of the blood and put it on the two doorposts of the lintel of the house in which they eat it. So they take the blood, and a little later he'll tell us with the hyssop, but they take the blood and they dab the doorposts and the lintel. They shall eat the flesh that night, roasted on the fire, with unleavened bread and bitter herbs they shall eat it. Do not eat any of it raw or boiled in water, but roasted. So he's very specific in how you prepare the lamb. It's got to be roasted. Can't be boiled or raw. I don't know if you want to eat it raw, but with its head, with its legs and its inner part. So the whole lamb is to be roasted all at once. Has anyone actually ever done slaughtered a lamb for Pesach or been somewhere where that's been done? Have you done that, Mark, or seen it?
No, I haven't done it yet. I know Asias does it each year.
Yeah. So I'm going to go to Asias's Pesach this year, so I'll see how it's done, and this should be very interesting. So it's got to be the whole lamb or goat. You can use goat too. Has to be roasted on the fire. In this manner you shall eat it, with your belt fastened, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand. So that gives more credence to the idea of being, like we were talking, vigilant and just ready to go. And you shall eat it in haste. It is Yahuwah's Passover, or Pesach, and actually the word Pesach means Passover. That's the actual meaning. For I will pass through the land of Egypt that night, and I will strike all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and on all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgments. I am Yahuwah. The blood shall be a sign for you on the houses where you are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and no plague will befall you to destroy you when I strike the land of Egypt. So we are saved by grace and mercy, but there is work to be done. He says, put the blood on the doorposts and the lintels. So you better put the blood on the doorposts and the lintels, or else the destroyer
So
will
wouldn't
be knocking at your door.
this
What's
is really a lot like the faith of Abraham. I mean, Abraham believed God, but then he had to go and make a sacrifice. He had to go,
Yeah,
and that was proof that he believed was in the deeds that he was going to do.
yeah,
And so if we really believe that he is going to spare us and the destroyer is going to go over us and pass over, then the evidence of our faith will be in that we will do these things that he asks us to do, down to the letter.
yeah, yep. Verse 14, this day shall be for you a memorial day, and you shall keep it as a feast to Yahuwah throughout the generations as a statute forever. So that means that every year when Passover rolls around, that you are to memorialize that day.
Septuagint says eternal ordinance.
Eternal, yeah. Well, the Hebrew uses the word olam, which means forever or eternal. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. On the first day you shall remove leaven out of your houses, for if anyone eats what is leavened from the first day until the seventh day, that person shall be cut off from Israel. So it says remove the leaven on the first day. We generally get the leaven out before, but I think it would be a good idea on that first day just to go through your house and make sure, is there any leaven in the house? And just make sure that you get it all out. So,
Well,
but he
it's-
does say do it on the first day, so maybe you would want to do it on the first day, get everything out. I don't know.
Yeah, it says here in verse 8, they shall eat the flesh that same night, roasted with fire. They're going to eat it with unleavened bread. So here we see really the unleavened bread is already moving forward even before the first day of unleavened bread is beginning.
Yeah,
And I think that a lot of this was taking place probably by noon on that 14th day. It's obviously a preparation day, the 14th.
right.
So the preparation is to have everything ready because you've obviously got to be eating that meal with the unleavened bread.
And it would probably take a while to roast a lamb.
And Polly and I were talking because my daughter she's been making bread, and so you have this piece that you take out and you make a new batch with that piece that you pull out.
Yeah, the
And
stuff.
it takes time to do that. And so just like here, they didn't have time for the bread to rise. So they were moving in haste, so it was unleavened. It didn't have the opportunity for any of that yeast to get in there to make it rise. But yeah, so.
Hey, Mark, I have a question about what you just said, because a lot of people do that. And you hear them say, oh, I've got my family's starter from 100 years ago. Have you ever heard that?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there's
Yep.
people
Yep.
literally keep it forever. And it says no leaven in the house. So you need to get rid of that stuff.
Yeah,
Do uh, do you do that? I mean, does everybody do that? I mean, we
Well,
here.
so we were just talking about this. So with Polly and my daughter and we were just reviewing this, and we realized, so each Passover, you're really starting with a whole new batch. It's not a 100-year deal, or shouldn't be. So each Passover, it's a fresh new thing. And so that's kind of what I'm taking away with it, or gaining from the understanding with Passover, and all of the leaven is gone. And so, and the whole reason that they had to move in haste, and the bread was unleavened. So yeah, I think if we were to practice that, it would probably even make the whole Passover event even more meaningful.
yeah. I have heard it, I've read somewhere that unleavened bread was a creation of Egypt. I don't know if anybody has ever heard this or not. Before it was just all unleavened bread, or they created the leaven in bread. And so they're in Egypt, and leavened bread is a thing that they probably didn't know of before, possibly. And that's part of the reason for getting the leaven out, is you're coming out of Egypt. The leaven in the bread is more of a sign of wealth and prosperity, or that kind of thing. Worldliness, I guess. Nothing wrong with wealth and prosperity, but just worldly attitudes, I guess. That kind of idea. Verse 16. On the first day you shall hold a holy assembly. This is the word Mikra Kadesh. And on the seventh day, a holy assembly. So for the unleavened bread, the first day after Passover, it was a holy assembly, convocation, and then the seventh day. No work shall be done on those days. So those are Sabbath days. We call them Shabbatons. Is that what we call them? The first time I came to Living Messiah, I heard you, Mark, talk about Shabbatons, and it blew me away. No work shall be done on those days, but what everyone needs to eat, that alone may be prepared by you. So whatever you want to cook for those days is okay. And you shall observe the feast of unleavened bread. Although in the Hebrew it doesn't use the word feast, it just says to observe unleavened bread. For on this day I brought your host out of the land of Egypt. For on this very day I brought your host out of the land of Egypt. So there's an interesting word in the Hebrew. It's called it's this word. I can't find it now. I have it written down somewhere. That's not it. Be'etzam is the word, but the word etzam is the word bone. Be'etzem. Etzem is the word for bone, and in this Hebrew transliteration it says, "For on the bone of the day of this day," which I thought was an interesting phrase, the bone of this day. But I looked up that word with the beit prefix, be'etzem. It means that word means actually or as a matter of fact. So the word very is a pretty apt word. So say on this very day, be'etzem. But I found it interesting that how they in Hebrew they tie up body parts to certain ideas, and just the idea that they would say the bone of this day. That's
Wow.
That's also like in the instructions for the building of the wilderness tabernacle. In the Hebrew, they use all kinds of body parts, ribs, the head, the cranium, all these different hip, leg bone, thigh bone. There's all these references to all these body parts in reference to constructing the tabernacle.
That's interesting.
Wow.
I just thought that was kind of interesting. Because I actually looked up the word, and I did find in the Hebrew dictionary the word be'etzem. I was, oh, interesting. In the first month, from the 14th day of the month at evening, you shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month at evening. So starting with your Passover meal, going all the way through the end of the day, on the 21st day, we will eat unleavened bread. No leaven we will eat.
So the command is to eat unleavened each day.
Right.
Yeah.
I usually just buy those Jewish crackers at the grocery store, the
Matzah.
matzah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they say on the label they're okay for Pesach, so it says okay for Pesach, and then in other places it says don't eat for a Seder.
Yeah.
Well, which one is it?
Hey, Mark, does Polly make matzah at home too?
She does.
Does she go like by the schedule? Like you got so many minutes to do it?
No. She has
It's tough. It is tough.
It's hard to make.
Yeah, she makes bread, but we tried matzah one time and it was not good. It was ugly.
Oh,
It was very ugly. It was not good.
Deborah, did you make it when we did Pesach, or somebody else did that?
I made some tortillas without any leaven.
Oh, okay.
Those are pretty easy.
Oh, Paul's here. Hey, Paul.
Hey there. Yeah, Wanda used to make it, and I can remember her hurrying really quickly to get it. And yeah, so that it would be unleavened. But she got to the point where she got pretty good at it making it. But you know, I don't know how to do any of that. I would watch her, but I do
Yeah.
not know how to do it.
I don't think I would be very adept at doing it myself. So for 7 days, no leaven is to be found in your houses. If anyone eats what is leavened, that person will be cut off from the congregation of Israel, whether he's a sojourner or a native of the land. Now, in our day and age, if you were to inadvertently eat leaven, I don't suppose we would cut you off. But back in the day here, you're in the, as John likes to call it, the Torah gated community. People are watching out for each other. So you shall eat nothing leavened in all your dwelling places. You shall eat unleavened bread. Then Moses called all the elders of Israel and said to them, go and select lambs for yourselves according to your clans and kill the Passover lamb. So apparently he gave this lesson, and then he calls the man probably just maybe on that day or the 9th or whatever. So they've got their instructions for what to do. So when he says go and select lambs for yourselves and kill the Passover lamb, they know that they're to go on the 10th day, select the lamb, and then on the 14th day to slaughter it. Take a bunch of hyssop and dip it in the blood that is in the basin. So previously he just said put blood on the doorpost. Now he's furthering the instruction and saying take hyssop, which I'm not exactly sure what hyssop is. Does anybody? I know it's a plant of sort. I looked it up in the dictionary, and all I got is an aromatic labiate herb, Hyssopus officinalis, having blue flowers. It's kind of a shrub, though, isn't it? That would, I imagine, be indigenous to that area. I don't know if it grows in this area. Arizona being a desert area, maybe there's some sort of related plant.
That would be hilarious if it was only indigenous to Egypt and Israel, and anyone else outside of those.
Yeah, I'm not really sure.
They're out of luck if they want to put hyssop on or use it, and hence the reason you better get to Israel to celebrate Passover.
Yeah. Well, hyssop comes up quite a bit in their rites. Hyssop, scarlet, and I can't remember what the third one was, but
Well, in Easton's Bible Dictionary, it says that they think it's majorum, which is a herb. There's 6 species of that herb that grow in that area, but it also grows here. I've grown it in my backyard.
oh, really? Okay. It's probably some kind of desert shrubbery then.
Kind of a herb, yeah.
Yeah. Like a small little plant. So take the hyssop, dip the blood in the basin and touch the lintel and the 2 doorposts with the blood that is in the basins. None of you shall go out of the door of his house until the morning. So it seems that they were to stay inside. They weren't to go out and risk running into the destroyer, I suppose. For Yahuwah will pass through to strike the Egyptians. And when he sees the blood on the lintel and on the 2 doorposts, Yahuwah will pass over the door and will not allow the destroyer to enter your house to strike you. So apparently whoever this destroyer is, he's under the command of Yahuwah. And when Yahuwah sees blood on the doorposts and lintels, he tells him, you don't go there. Now, I would imagine a lot of the Egyptians probably took the advice of Moses and put blood on their doorposts and their lintels. Because if they held Moses in high esteem, that they probably would have taken him at his word and said, well, we don't want our firstborn being killed, so that's what
Yep.
we're going to do.
I think it was interesting, Gary had brought up the idea that since Yeshua said that the wine was his blood, and he's the Passover lamb, so he started putting wine on the doorposts.
Yeah,
It's being used at Passover. I really liked that, and so we did that this last year for Passover, and that's a pretty awesome idea.
yeah. Yeah, I've heard of people doing that too. Verse 24, you shall observe this rite as a statute for you and your sons forever. So we are to observe Passover. How long does it say for? For forever, right? So if the Bishop of Rome says, well, we don't have to celebrate Passover anymore, it's okay. Should we believe the Bishop of Rome? I don't think so. That's actually what happened, I think, in the 1st or 2nd century. It was the Bishop of Rome against the Bishop of Ephesus, and I believe the Bishop of Ephesus was Polycarp. And of course, in Rome, they wanted to do away with Passover and just celebrate Easter. But the bishop in Ephesus, Polycarp, he said, no, we're going to keep celebrating Passover. And this bishop, and now this is before they had all the popery and all this stuff, but the bishop in Rome actually excommunicated Polycarp. And some other bishops got together and they said, well, we really can't just excommunicate the guy, so they let him back in. But go ahead.
So it's kind of interesting in verse 23, the Targum says that the Yahweh will have mercy at the door. So
That's interesting.
he's calling the door mercy. And I was just looking as I was reminded about something that he says. Yeshua said to them, truly, truly, I say to you, I am the door of the sheep.
Yeah,
So anyone who enters through me, he will be saved. And so it's kind of interesting to be thinking about the mercy is at the door,
yeah,
which is Yeshua's own words. That's the picture of him.
can I even think of a picture of how the crossbeam would have been the lintel, and maybe the posts on the two sides of him with the other prisoners were the doorposts, and blood's being spilled. And didn't the soldier, somebody offer him a drink with hyssop on a sponge or something? Does that ring a bell to you? I see Kevin shaking his head yes.
Yeah, when he was on the cross, the soldier puts a sponge on had vinegar and hyssop.
Yeah,
What's it
okay.
do? And he raises it up to Yeshua. Am I not right? I think that's right, isn't it? I know
Yeah.
vinegar was on there. I thought hyssop was too.
I thought it was on a hyssop plant, like a sponge or something.
Oh, I thought it was on the tip of a spear, but I'm not sure after that. But I know he did do that.
Well, there was hyssop. All three of the elements for the cleansing the leper are there at the crucifixion. So you've got all of those things because Yeshua is like the red heifer, which the red heifer was sacrificed with the hyssop, the cedar wood, and the scarlet. And
Mm.
so I believe, I know that we see the robe and the hyssop. I had always said, well, the cedar wood could have been the plaque above his head that said, that had the statement written on it, or it could have been one of the beams, could have been
Right.
cedar. So yeah, it would have been very interesting to have all those things present, because I think the place that he's crucified is the same spot that the red heifer is sacrificed.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah.
Another analogy or something that's interesting is later on when they cross the Red Sea, you have the two walls of water that are the doorposts and the cloud of Yahweh overhead. That's the lintel.
Oh, yeah.
Very nice.
Verse 25, and when you come to the land that Yahuwah will give you, as he has promised, you shall keep this service. And when your children say to you, what do you mean by this service? You shall say, it is the sacrifice of Yahuwah's Passover, for he passed over the houses of the people of Israel in Egypt when he struck the Egyptians, but spared our houses. And the people bowed their heads and worshipped.
So in the Targum, it says, you will say that this is a sacrifice of mercy before Yahweh, who had mercy on the households of the children of Israel. I like that addition of mercy there, because
Mhm.
can't forget that this is, since Yeshua is the Passover lamb who brought mercy to everybody that you know that looked to him for that mercy. So I like that idea of, because we need to always remember that this whole thing is about mercy. The people cried out and he shows up with mercy. So yeah, it's a good thing.
So in the future, when they are in the land and their children will ask them. Now we have to remember all through their experience in the desert, I don't believe they did the Passover until the very end when they crossed over. So when they come into the land, they're told, basically teach your children. You walk on the way, when you rise up, when you lay down. You want to teach your children this, so it's a continual yearly thing. And the people bowed their heads in worship. Now, this is the second time they did this also back in chapter 4, verse 31, when Moses first came and told them everything that Yahweh had told him to tell them. It says at that time, too, that they bowed their heads and they worshiped. So here, once again, when they get all their instruction for what to do for the Passover, they bow their heads and worship. Verse 29, and this is the actual plague itself, the 10th plague. At midnight, Yahuwah struck down all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh, who sat on his throne, to the firstborn of the captive who was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of the livestock. And Pharaoh rose up in the night, he and all his servants and all the Egyptians. And there was a great cry in Egypt, for there was not a house where someone was not dead. I can only imagine what that would be like. It'd be like the city you live, where everybody, all your neighbors, everybody has somebody who's died in their household, firstborn child. And if a parent was a firstborn person, they would have died, you know. But I always have wondered, is it just referring to the man, or could it be a man or a woman firstborn? Any thoughts on that? Go ahead.
I was going to say, here you've got this whole midnight thing, and I was reminded of another verse Matthew 25 says, but at midnight there was a shout, behold, the bridegroom comes, he comes out to meet him. So you have this in one instance, you have this mercy happening at midnight where lives are spared. But you have this other thought at midnight where it's rejoicing because the bridegroom has come to take the bride. So it can be a display of mercy immediately following joy that the bridegroom has come.
Verse 30, and Pharaoh rose up in the night, all his servants, and there was a great cry in that house where someone was not dead. Then he summoned Moses and Aaron by night. So that's why I was wondering, is the previous time, is that the last time Moses actually saw the face of Pharaoh, or is this the last time? Up, go out from among my people, both you and the people of Israel, and go, serve Yahuwah as you have said. Take your flocks and your herds as you have said, and be gone, and bless me also. So he wants to make sure he's blessed. Verse 33, the Egyptians were urgent with the people to send them out of the land in haste. But they wanted to get them out. Come on, let's go. For they said, we shall all be dead. For the people took their dough before it was leavened, their kneading bowls being bound up in their cloaks on their shoulders. That's what we were talking about, how they just took the dough as it was and didn't even have really time to cook it, I guess. The people of Israel had also done as Moses told them, for they had asked the Egyptians for silver and gold jewelry and for clothing. And Yahweh had given the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they let them have what they asked. Thus they plundered the Egyptians.
Can you imagine? You've been these people's slaves, and you're gonna go up to the people and say, can I have some of that gold there on the table? How about the silver? That nice necklace you're wearing around your neck. Can I have that, please?
And they just, sure, there, take it.
That would be very awkward, wouldn't it?
And they hand every bit of it over.
Yep.
Every bit of it. All of it. They give it all to them.
Or they can say, hey, you remember we met you earlier and asked for straw and you gave it to us. Now we're asking for your jewelry.
But Yahweh had given the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they let them have what they asked. Thus they plundered the Egyptians. And the people of Israel journeyed from Ramses to Sukkot, about 600,000 men on foot, besides the women and children. So that's quite a bit of people. 600,000 plus the women and children could be anywhere 2 million maybe.
Yeah, and so the 38 is I like it because in the Masoretic it's mixed multitude. The Septuagint says a mixed crowd. The Targum says many foreigners went up with them.
Yeah.
So that really brings it into because we all always have kind of suspected the mixed multitude was a mixture of Egyptians and who knows, maybe some
Ethiopians or
yeah.
around.
Yeah, people have come to see this crazy stuff they've heard rumors about. And so you've got these foreigners, they're joining like,
Yeah.
I mean, this is the real deal. We're gonna go, we've never seen a God do anything like this before. This must be the God. Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of people participated in the Passover, putting the blood on their doorposts and lintels.
Can you imagine being one of the Egyptians and maybe the ninth or the eighth plague, they were starting to get wise and starting to be obedient and seeing blessings, seeing that, the favor of the Lord came upon them because it didn't happen to them. So they end up doing this whole thing here, which seemed really odd to them. But, the next, when the whole night is passing and all their neighbors are saying we've got dead people, but the ones who did what they were supposed to didn't. Man,
Yeah.
that would have been something.
Well, we know that Caleb was probably one of those mixed multitude people. The
Yep.
mixed multitude also went up with them, and very much livestock, both flocks and herds. So that had to be a rather large group, people and animals. And they baked unleavened cakes of the dough that they had brought out of Egypt, for it was now leavened, because they were thrust out of Egypt. They could not wait, nor had they prepared any provisions for themselves.
So basically they've got this dough that, like you said, that hasn't leavened yet. And the women know that they're based on the word of the Almighty, they're going to be leaving. So they're like, okay, well, it hasn't risen. So we got to bake what we have.
Yeah,
So they're making unleavened cakes, which is going to be, the provisions for them as they're traveling, the little ones and all these that are needing care. Moms are going to be giving the little kids some unleavened, pieces of bread to eat in the journey.
yeah. So where do you think they cooked it? Did they just like have a little camp stove on a wagon or something? And they,
I'm thinking they may have prepared it and cooked it before they left,
yeah, for their meal, yeah.
knowing that they were going to be leaving or trusting that they're going to be leaving. And so, here you got your bread, it hasn't risen, and they're obviously taking some with them to bake on the way, but I think some of it has been cooked before they actually leave.
Yeah,
Well, it would have had to have been because it said they were eating unleavened cakes during Passover. Yeah.
right. So they had some of it prepared, but whatever they had, they just slung on their shoulders and
Right, right.
make their next stop.
So for us, our future is going to look, very similar. You're that preparation day on the 14th, you get up early on the sun rises on the 14th. You better get busy baking.
Yeah. Verse 40, the time that the people of Israel lived in Egypt was 430 years. Now, I don't believe it was 430 years that they were in Egypt. Actually, the Septuagint, it says when they were sojourners in Egypt and Canaan. And even the King James says the sojourning of the children of Israel who dwelt in Egypt. So I believe it's the time from they were in Canaan when Abraham first went to Canaan when he was 75. And if you were to do the math, it would mean that they were in Egypt for 215 years. And not
Agreed.
all of that, obviously they were not slaves. So
Yeah, I agree. Still a long time, isn't it?
yeah, you figure 430 years. I mean, we'd have to go back to like 1490 or something. Wait a minute. We're in 24, that'd be 1594, 15 or something like that.
If it wasn't for this verse, 41, I would have never had the idea to check the 1290 and 1260 and 1335 days in Daniel to see if they were the number of years between feast dates.
Yeah.
So,
The verse
now-
41.
verse 41, yeah. Because it says at the end of the 430 years to the very day, the host went out of Egypt. And so when I read that for the 35th time or whatever it was, I was like, wait a minute. Is that saying that the 430 started at Passover and they're coming out at Passover and the 430 years are the number of years between the bookmarks, which is
Yeah.
Passover? Well, I had to go all the way back to Abraham. And remember, we talked about how many Passovers in a row it was that they were, all these different promises and visitations, things that were happening were on Passover.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was 430 years from Passover to Passover. So
You know, when he goes to Canaan, he has a visitation, and I believe that that was the 14th day of the month. In Genesis 12:4, I'll read 12:4 through 7. So Abraham went as Yahuwah had told him, and Lot went with him. Abraham was 75, or Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. And Abram took Sarai his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their possessions that they had gathered, and the people that they had acquired in Haran. And they set out to go to the land of Canaan. When they came to the land of Canaan, Abram passed through the land to the place at Shechem, to the oak of Moreh. At that time, the Canaanites dwelt in the land. Then Yahuwah appeared to Abram and said, to your offspring, I will give you this land. So he built there an altar to Yahuwah, who had appeared to him. So I believe that if it says to the very day, that this is the day that he's referring to, the day that Yahuwah appeared to Abram when he first went to Canaan. So from that moment until this moment, 430 years to the day.
Passover to Passover.
Passover to Passover. Yeah. At the end of 430 years, on that very day, all the hosts of Yahuwah went out from the land of Egypt. It was a night of watching or observing by Yahuwah to bring them out of the land of Egypt. So this same night is a night of watching or observing kept to Yahuwah by all the people of Israel throughout their generations. So when I was reading this, it kind of gave me the conviction that, well, maybe Passover, we should stay, at least, you know, if that's what you want to do. But I'm thinking of doing it, just staying up through the night, you know, and watching and, you know, and seeing what will happen, if anything. So we could stop there. Any thoughts people have or comments? Questions?
Good
I
stuff.
did, I have a question. Oh, go, somebody else said something. No. Did you ever get the answer on the firstborn? Is that male, female?
Oh, no.
Daughter? I was curious if it was it just the son or was it female included?
I mean, I'm curious about that myself.
What was the question?
If when it says the firstborn, do they mean just males or male or female?
Female.
Question always comes up, it seems.
Yeah, and that same question always come up on the redeeming the firstborn.
Yeah.
Is he talking about the first that opens the womb, or is he talking about the firstborn male? Because I know it says in one of the verses, the first to open the womb.
Yeah.
So yeah, very, very interesting. Paul has the same.
Paul has it.
Yeah, I looked that up too, and it's not definitive. It uses the word Bekor. And then when you go, it does say the first to open the womb. But yeah, and it also has a root in one of the words that was used there having to do with first fruit. So that's a good question. If anybody finds out, let me know, because
Well, there's a way to find out. We could wait until the real Passover comes and somebody could just fail to put some blood on the doorpost so we can find out what's really going to
Uh-oh, who wants to volunteer?
happen.
Nope, not me. Anybody else?
Who on this call is a firstborn?
Who what?
Who here is a firstborn?
Lisa is.
I'm a firstborn male, but I have an older sister.
Okay, you're a firstborn male. Ward's a firstborn.
Lisa's a firstborn female.
Lisa's the firstborn female. All right. I'm in the clear. I'm the last born.
Oh,
I hear you. It's good to be the baby. Hey,
I'm
quick
actually,
question. Quick question.
go ahead.
Back in chapter, well, I guess we're still on 12. So 12, what is it? 12, oh, 12, 11. And thus you shall eat it with a belt on your waist and sandals on your feet and a staff in your hand. I know we're very like particular with like unleavened bread, bitter herbs, and like lamb, and even how to cook it. I mean, this might sound stupid, but like, are we like literally supposed to wear sandals and have a belt on?
You could wear your slippers, that's okay.
You remember that?
There's some that wear sandals or slippers all the time, but yeah, I
Don?
think, yeah, I think that obviously this was the clothing of the day.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think the idea is just to be ready.
the preparation to move. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
And make sure your Tesla is fully charged.
It's only gonna get 200 miles.
Yeah. Then you gotta walk
Yeah.
after that.
That's enough to get down to Bisbee, I guess. It's about 200 miles from my door to the property.
I think most everybody's vehicle can make it there in a tank.
Yeah. So unless there's anything else, we can so we stopped at verse 42. Next week will be on 43.
Good stuff.
Okay. Well, I'll close this out in prayer. And Father, we thank you so much for the reading of your word. We thank you for just that you have given us your Passover. We're so thankful, Father, that you, through the blood of Yeshua, Father, that you pass over us, Father, and give us life. We thank you so much. Thank you for all your blessings, all you do for us. In Yeshua's name, amen.
Amen.